Now, real people, real opinions. Nighttime Talk.
Ireland's classic hits radio.
Promises, pledges and proposals, we've all heard them. This first 7 days of the campaign trail have been chock-a-block full of drama and fun, and I'm sure you've been all following it very, very closely. We've been here on Nighttime Talk. So 7 days into the campaign trail ahead of the general election, and there has been promises, pledges and proposals from the main parties. A quick look at the main things raised. Sinn Féin has proposed a new immigration management agency to speed up the asylum application process. Fine Gael has promised to abolish the carers allowance means test and introduce a new family carer payment of €325 per week. Fianna Fáil says it would deliver national on-call GP coverage and increase the number of consultants in emergency medicine. The Soc Dems want to revise the Climate Action Plan so Ireland can reach its international targets by 2030 and avoid EU fines. The Green Party say they will invest €1.2 billion in an expanded home retrofit programme from a new climate and nature savings fund. People Before Profit Solidarity launched its manifesto focusing on housing and the cost of living. And Labour says it will invest in community football facilities to help grow the domestic league here. And Aim 2 finally launched its policy for agriculture and rural Ireland, saying it wants to establish a competition authority to ensure fairer prices for farmers, reduce regulation and oppose a cull on the national herd. So, we want to know what you think about these promises, pledges and proposals. Do you think they've missed anything? Do you think they're realistic? What else would you want to see from the next government? Let me know what you think. Get in touch on WhatsApp 0871 88 0008. You can also get involved on social media on X at Classic Hits Radio or Ireland's Classic Hits Radio on Facebook. But firstly, to discuss the campaign so far is columnist and broadcaster Ian O Doherty. Ian, you're very welcome to the programme. I'm looking forward to talking to you.
Not at all. How are you?
Very good. It's great to have you. I want to get your take on things so far, 7 days in.
Well, the thing that really I notice has been the real apathy of so many people. And it's an apathy that's kind of mixed with anger. And it's something that I know from speaking to some of the politicians and some of the people involved with the parties is that they're very well aware of it as well. And, you know, they're seeing more sort of hostility on the streets. And it's a really weird combination of hostility then with indifference. And I think a lot of people now just don't think that the parties are actually speaking to them, that they're not necessarily getting through. Look, I mean, we're just coming out off the back of a fascinating American presidential election, right, where really Trump won because people knew what he was selling. And they could choose to buy what he was selling or they could choose not to. But nobody really knew what Kamala Harris was selling. Whereas Trump was very simple. It was about immigration, it was about the culture wars, it was about national security and about the economy. And there's nobody really here who's able to be that concise and that succinct. I mean, the government parties, they can't promise any revolutionary new solutions because they've been in power for well over a decade. So if they'd suddenly magicked some rabbit out of a hat that was going to change all of this, well, that they would have been able to do it by now. So they're in the rather invidious position that every party that's been in power for a long time has been in. It's a bit like if you're a manager of a football club, you can only say the same thing so many times in the dressing room before the players stop listening to you. And I think really that's what Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are going to find. And what's interesting as well is that they'll have analysts who've been looking at the amount of incumbent governments who've lost. I mean, this is the year of elections. And the amount of incumbent governments who've actually lost, where people are just really cheesed off, basically, and they want a new change. But whether in Ireland, whether they're actually going to get that change, I think that's genuinely very doubtful. I think this could well turn out to be the election of the independents.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Ian, because for the last week or so we've been talking about this, and nearly every single caller into the programme has said that they're going to vote independent. And it's an interesting thing to take that temperature of the electorate, because it tells you that on the 29th of November, people are really heading to the polls to say something about the parties. Do you get that kind of sense of things?
Yeah. I mean, this will be very much a referendum on the parties. It's not just a general election, it's a referendum on the establishment. And they are going to lose, although they will still be in power. In many ways, the big question is who will be the third wheel? Will it be the Soc Dems or will it be the Greens? So Sinn Féin a couple of years ago would have been looking at really been in a far more prominent position than they are now. But the thing is, Sinn Féin have lost so much of their core base. Again, to go back to Trump, because a lot of people now no longer know what it is Sinn Féin are selling. Sinn Féin used to have a very simple thing, housing, and stuff like that, and that worked. And they were able to really attract younger coterie of voters who don't care about the Troubles. They weren't alive during the Troubles. They don't remember the Troubles. They don't look on Sinn Féin as much of a Republican party as somebody of my generation would. However, in the last 18 months to 2 years, they seem to have lost that message because they got dragged into the immigration debate and they got dragged into very progressive sort of social issues, which might have appealed to some of the newer, younger fans, if you like, of the party, but they completely alienated the more traditional, long-standing and diehard ones. So some of their people are saying that they're actually going to do better than they were expecting to a few weeks ago, and that very well may be the case. But they look at the fact that the last election they didn't run enough candidates. They just for a party that like to pride themselves on being very tightly run and very smart and, you know, almost Stalinist in how they approach things in terms of rigid discipline, and, you know, that all seems to be gone. So I think basically if you're in Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael, if you're an individual TD, you'd be worried about your seat. Most of them will be. But from a party point of view, I think really from the 30th onwards, after, you know, Friday week, I think we'll be in power looking at pretty much more of the same. But what's going to be interesting will be how the opposition is constituted and who will actually have the whip hand in that.
And Ian, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael in government together, it's a messy break-up. It always is when things like this come to the end of their run. How are they going to square that with the electorate running up to the campaign? They're going to be obviously debating about which party is better, and then after the campaign, they may just have to get back in bed together. You know, it is a possibility.
Well, we see this every time there's a leadership campaign in any individual party, and we saw it recently with the Tories, where it was Jenrick and Badenoch, and they were trying to knock the other while also realising that they were going to have to be working with the other person, no matter who won. So you're kind of saying this is a terrible person, but they're not really that terrible, you know, and I'd be happy to work with them in the future. So what we have at the moment is Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael trying to tell the voters that Fine Gael are terrible or Fianna Fáil are terrible, but they're not so terrible that we're not going to work with them again in the future. And the thing is, one of the things I found is that the people are more sophisticated than a lot of politicians give them credit for, give us credit for, because the politicians, and crucially their handlers and their SPADs, the infamous SPADs, their special advisors, they tend to live very much in a bubble. And it's top-down politics. It's like the leader wants this, or, you know, the whip says this is what we're going to do. And so they tend to be kind of cut out then when people throw up issues. And I know that a couple of the Green canvassers have been really cut out on the trans issue, for example, around my neighbourhood, just from talking to neighbours. And one of my neighbours, she has the first question she asks anybody who's knocked in at her door, and there haven't really been that many either, has to be said. That's another noticeable thing. But the first question my neighbour Teresa says is, can a woman have a penis? Because she's a woman of a certain age and she's furious about the trans argument. And politicians try and say, oh, this is irrelevant, it's just part of the culture wars. But if you look at 85% of the swing states in America had trans as one of the categories in which they voted for. So this is an important issue. And she was talking to one of the Green canvassers now, not the candidate, the canvasser, and he genuinely didn't know what the party policy was. And the only person that she's met so far was actually a Fine Gael candidate, Emma Blaine. And my neighbour said to her, do you know, kind of woman of a penis? And Emma Blaine apparently went, no, of course not. So people want a definitive answer from their candidates. Because the people sometimes forget, and the politicians sometimes forget, the politicians are going for a job interview on Friday week. And if you've ever been on an interview panel, you know that when the person comes to you looking for a job, they better bloody well impress you, or else you'll get somebody else who will. And I think that dynamic has become quite skewed in recent times. I think the politicians have become... It's unfair to call them smug. I mean, even the politicians I really disagree with, I actually respect, because it is a tough job, and it's, you know, a lot of hours and a lot of effort, and it's too easy and it's too lazy to say, oh, you know, they're all on the pig's back and, you know, it's easy for them. It's not. It's a tough gig. It is a tough gig, and they don't get the respect they deserve a lot of the time. And I'd say that, for example, the party that I have the biggest problem with will be Sinn Féin. That's gone back all my life. I can't stand Sinn Féin, but I still respect the people who stand for that party, because it's all about the process, and it's about putting your neck on the line, and it's about saying, these are my values, will you hire me to do the job? And certainly from my own point of view, I'd never say who I'll be voting for anyway, but normally by this stage I'd pretty much have a fairly indication of 1 down to 5, maybe 6, and then the rest is kind of a mix and grab 'em. I really don't know.
When you mentioned Trump there, it brought to mind the ad that he ran over there that turned out to be the most effective ad they had, and it was Kamala Harris is for they, them, and Trump is for you. And it seemed to just encapsulate the mood of, as you said, 85% of people. Yeah,
this is the thing. I mean, the Democrats like to see themselves as being the smart party. They weren't. They played this one unbelievably badly. I mean, they played this one like amateurs. And whoever came up with that campaign slogan, it's a genius. It's as simple as "Make America Great Again" that he had in 2016. It's boom, you're in, you're out. I mean, there's a fascinating history to how election campaign slogans. It's not necessarily that they can win or lose, but they become memorable. It's like when the election 20 odd years ago, the Tories, where they had "Labour isn't working," Labour, you know. And it stuck. It's just stuck because it worked on so many levels. And the Trump thing, Kamala's for they, them, Donald's for you. Boom. That's the bullseye. That's, you know, if you can explain something to somebody in that few words, in such a short sentence, you have it. And this goes back into what I was just saying a minute ago. People knew what he was selling. And people didn't necessarily know what Kamala Harris was just basically talking about vibes. And then when the vibes began to run out, she was talking about Trump voters being Nazis. I mean, it was pathetic. And this will go down in history as one of the worst campaigns ever. It's fascinating. But what I do think when I look around for our one next week, there seems to be, there's kind of, obviously there's a move for change. We need to improve housing. I think we're in for major economic shockwaves in the next couple of years, with American big tech companies pulling out and stuff. I think that's going to be the big economic problem that we're going to face. So we're going back to housing and the economy and immigration.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you, Ian, because, I mean, as you said at the top of the interview, you said that there's apathy from the general voting public. But in terms of the many issues that are going to be on voters' minds, what do you think is going to be the big overriding one in the end?
I think there'll be two, to be honest. Just to give you, I sound like a politician. I won't give you the straight answer. I'll give you two instead. I think it'll be housing, and I think it'll be immigration.
Okay.
And I think the current government is woefully failing on both counts. And I think most of the people do as well, and privately the government would probably admit that themselves. But the problem then is that you start looking around and you can see who can be a viable alternative. I mean, you're not going to, vote in 120 odd independents. I mean, that's just like putting a load of cats in a bag and seeing, see what's going to happen. But I think, and it's something I was talking about this to a friend of mine who's involved with one of the parties, and I was saying that if we could, at some stage over the next couple of years, come up with a party that is basically a party for common sense, that wants to limit immigration, that wants to increase, but comes up with common sense that doesn't come across like they're completely mad and totally right-wing, they would do really well. I do think that people are looking out for something. I think that's why Ain 2 are going to get a good pickup. They're not getting as high a pickup in the polls as they thought they might. But as we saw again last week in the States, the polls are nowhere near as reliable as they used to be. So I'd say, and I think they're in a fairly good position to pick up a few bouncing seats. I think there'll be a few surprises from the independent sector. I think there'll be a few big names probably bite the dust come this Friday.
Do you think we'll have a Fine Gael or a Fianna Fáil?
The way things are going, probably Fine Gael. Harris is doing better than Martin in the personal approval pollings and stuff like that. But it'll still end up being, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, and they'll end up going back into a rotating thing again. And it doesn't exactly stir the blood, let's put it that way. And the thing is, we all like elections. I mean, there's always a bit of excitement about it, and it gives us something to pretend to be excited about, if nothing else. But with this one, I do think I think the Greens are in trouble. I think they're in serious trouble because you can't, in the middle of a cost of living crisis, you can't be the party that keeps on telling your voters that they're going to have to pay more money and that you're going to bring in bills that they have to pay. That's just really, really bad politics, but then again, that's the Greens for you, But I think they're going to take a hit. I think Social Democrats will probably stay thereabouts. I think Ain 2 will probably get a bounce. Sinn Féin won't do as badly as people are predicting, I don't think. And then coming up on the outside track, it's keep an eye out for the independents. I think there'll be a couple of surprises there.
And if you were to rate the last government we had, if you were to give it an appraisal, was there anything that stood out to you that they did particularly well and something they completely fumbled?
No, because, let's put it this way, you could put it another way, that if you had to describe this government as a colour, it would be beige.
Right.
Maybe I'm just getting older and grumpier or something, but there was nothing. But I think the worst thing, what I will say, is their handling of the whole Israeli thing was disgraceful. Their partisan anti-Israeli approach was abominable. The decision to recognise the state of Palestine alongside Norway and Spain, regardless of whether Palestine was never a state, but that's not the argument. The argument is that basically a lot of American companies that we rely on just went, oh, okay, looks like we're going to have a problem here with Ireland, and trying to push through the Occupied Territories Bill. Again, that scared a lot of the investors. So allowing that to try and basically just get a fringe amount of votes who were very vocal on social media and stuff like that. I think that, personally, I wildly disagree with that decision anyway, but I'm unashamedly pro-Israeli. But I think from a political point of view, I think that was a very risky tactic, and I really don't think that one played off. But again, this is the nature of a government that just has looked tired, and they didn't have the energy that they needed really for something like a Brexit or anything like that. So I don't think things are going to change in the centre too much. I think we'll still end up with the same two parties on another leading the country. I think there'll be the usual degree of disgruntlement and grumbling that we as a nation tend to specialise in. And there is the sense that there isn't really there's the frustration that there isn't really a viable alternative, rightly or wrongly. And I think that's where the independents are going to pick up on that. I think they're going to get a lot of votes. It'll be interesting to see the transfers as well.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about independence, as I say here on the programme. I was quite surprised, actually, asking a few people which way they were going to go, and they had no problem telling me independent. So it will be interesting. But before I let you go, Ian, because I know you're an avid follower of American politics, much like myself, and we were asking people last night here on the programme about this move for the Department of Government Efficiency, Doge, conveniently the same name as Dogecoin. But Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy coming in from, I suppose you could say, well, it is the private sector to trim the fat of bureaucracy. Do you think that's a good idea, and could we learn something from that in Ireland?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's fantastic. But then I don't work in the swamp. I'm not one of the people who's going to find myself losing my job in the next 6 months. They are going to go through that whole thing like a dose of salts, and they're going to cut it out and they're going to cut it down, and they're going to enjoy it. You saw what Musk even did when he took over Twitter. I mean, you didn't like it, you were gone.
75% of the workforce gone.
Yeah, he's not messing around. But the thing is, when it comes to stuff like this, it's something that I always try to remind people is that a few years ago, Belgium went nearly 2 years without a government and nobody noticed. And that's a fact, and people tend to forget that. Basically everything just kept on keeping on. One of the things I would like to see, though, is an end to the ridiculous amount of power and very undemocratic amount of power that the NGOs seem to have over this particular government. That's another black mark against them.
That's something that's emerged recently, all right, hasn't it? People have really cottoned on to NGOs.
Yeah, and then when you have Pascal Dunny saying, "Oh no, they've no influence over us, but they're brilliant," and we listen to them. So basically, what we have is a situation where the government is paying these groups of idealists and activists. The government is paying these groups to tell them what to do. And you look at, how many NGOs are there involved in the immigration industry? There's more than 25. Of course you're always going to need more efficiency. I think Elon Musk and Ramaswamy, they're the boys to bring it in over there. there's going to be blood on the carpet over there. But I think a lot of people in Ireland as well, though, would like to see. You don't know where your taxes are going. You don't know what they're paying for. You're not getting any bang for your buck. Taxes go up, but people have less money in their pocket. They don't see an improvement in services. It's the old joke about Ireland is that we pay for a Nordic-style health system, which is brilliant, but we get an American-style one instead, which is terrible. Again, it goes back to the average voter just feeling that, we're just getting hosed on this one. And again, that goes back to, unfortunately, with the lack of a proper third party, which could have potentially been Sinn Féin, but it's not anymore, and it won't be for a while. So I think Ainty will do well. I think the independents will do really well, and I think we'll see a few of the big beasts getting in the neck. I think we'll see a few surprising seats being lost in this one.
Well, it's one to watch, that's for sure, and it's not long to go. It's a quick one, that's for sure, and I really appreciate you coming in tonight and talking to us. I was just thinking about
I hope my distinct lack of interest in how things go didn't come across too well. It's very hard to stir the blood on this one, but
listen, that's Irish politics. It's Irish politics, It is what it is.
Yeah, but the one thing I would say before I go, there are very few things, certainly nothing I'd be prepared to admit on radio, that I love doing more than voting. I've been on and reported from countries where people are dying for something that we just completely take for granted and we sneer at. And it's not a cliche when you say it doesn't matter who you vote for, just get out and vote. Just get out and vote. Yeah. It's because it's use it or lose it. Because once it's gone, it's never coming back. And we're seeing the EU taking away a lot of the democratic powers from individual member states and stuff. So that's a reminder that it's just hugely important, and I get a kick. I still feel it's a privilege, and I look at some of the countries in North Africa that I've been in, and some of the Muslim dictatorships and stuff, and quite literally there are people dying to have the right that we kind of go, oh, this is a pain in the arse.
Yeah,
long may we have that pain.
100%. I totally agree with you. And as just thinking of the taxi driver that dropped me in tonight, you know what he said to me? He said, it doesn't matter. The civil servants run the country in the end. It goes to what you said about Belgium.
This is very true. This is very true. The Sir Humphreys, but I mean, that's why, it'll be interesting to see how Doge works out. If that turns out to be brilliant in America, I tell you, if I was an Irish civil servant, I'd be looking very nervously over my shoulder right now.
Well, there you have it. Columnist and broadcaster Ian O Doherty, thank you so much for that. Enjoyed the chat.
Not at all, you're welcome.
We're going to go to Dave. Dave, what do you think? What do you think of all these promises and proposals that are being put forth?
Yeah, they're all full of fucking shit.
Okay.
Being dead honest with you. They are. It's election time. We all know what the crack is. They come out to promise you the world. They say, we're going to do this, 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 and this. And then when they get into power, they're like, oh, we can't do it because it's a civil service, or we don't have the money, or we tried, or blah, 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 fucking blah. It's the same thing over and over and over with them.
Well, I don't think they're purposely lying to you, Dave. I think they genuinely want to do these things, and they're.
Oh, come on, Gary, come on! You're not that naive, are you? Come on, who was the guy? Was it Michael Noonan? He had a really creepy voice. He sounded like an old Hammer horror villain. Was it him? He basically admitted himself when he was challenged on, well, you promised not to, shut down some A&E department. And he was like, yeah, well, everybody knows you're on the campaign trail. You make the promises, but you don't always keep them.
That was Pat Rabbit. Pat Rabbit very famously said that. He said, Ashy is all things when you're out there trying to get the vote.
Yeah. Do you know? And to be fair, it's Irish people governing other Irish people. We're a sneaky shower of bastards. We'll say anything you want to get your vote. There are very few politicians I can think of that actually got into power. And to be fair to them, right, I will say a lot of them do try. And everybody knows it's not necessarily the government, it's the civil service. But how many politicians have the balls to take on the civil service? I mean, Sláinte Care is a perfect example of how the HSE, the civil service, that all the bureaucracy and red tape in this country is holding us back. Because the main two people who were starting up Sláinte Care left. Because they said it themselves. They said the HSE is too hostile. The civil service is a fucking mess. It's an open secret in this country. It's not what you are, it's who you are. If you know someone in the council, it's easier to get a job. If you know someone in Irish Rail, it's easy to get a job. This country is run on nepotism.
So you think this is just a dance we do every few years, and the public know that it's all a load of, a heap of nonsense, and the politicians know that what they're doing is never really going to happen?
The problem is, we've loads of problems. Like everything in life, it's not one thing. It's a multifaceted problem. You see that your more kind of, how would you say, poor working class areas tend to have the lowest voter turnout. Whereas your more affluent areas, which would be the strongholds of, say, like the Fine Gaels and Fianna Fáils, they have very high voter turnout. They say we want people to vote, but they don't really put much effort into actually making sure people are getting out and voting, or are getting registered, or, people think that you have to, I know people have been voting for decades longer than me, and they think you have to fill out every name on the ballot sheet. Do you know, you learn about voting in secondary school, and you hear nothing about the mechanics of it or how it works after that. They're quite happy for the status quo to stay the way it is. And
how would you feel, Dave, if we brought in compulsory voting?
I'd love it. If you don't vote, you have a €50 fine. I guarantee I'd get arses off the seats.
Yeah.
I genuinely do. It wouldn't even have to be €50, €10, €20. Any amount of money taken out of somebody's pocket is enough to motivate them to get up off their arse.
All right, stay with me, Dave. Stay with me, Dave. I want to go to Billy, because Billy, you probably agree with Dave, because you think it's all a load of bull.
It's the biggest steaming pile of bullshit that we go through every 5 years, Gary. And come the 30th of November, it's all out the window. Everything that they promised is gone, and we're into government formation talks. And then it's like a no-name club dance back when you were a teenager, seeing who's going to dance with who first.
So you don't believe them at all?
No, I don't believe them at all. I think, I think, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, we all know that they're flirting with each other, and they're trying to They're like someone referenced it a couple on another show that they were like the married couple in Father Ted. They're John and Mary. That they're just there's a little bit of aggro between them, but they really love each other and they're going to get back into bed. You've got Sinn Féin. More worried about getting associated with the IRA and the atrocities carried out during the Troubles and getting called out on that. I say, if you're going to hang around with terrorists, don't be surprised when someone asks you about the terrorists you used to hang around with. You've got the Labour Party, the Soc Dems, they're pretty much the same bloody thing. They're, again, two parties that are, they protest too much about how well they'd get on together. You've got the Trotskyites in People Before Profit who haven't a clue. They say that they're left-wing, but they're just populists at the end of the day. They have no idea what left-wing politics should look like. So I'm just sick of it already. Can we get to November 30th and just get to the brass tacks of someone sitting down and actually forming a government? Because it doesn't really matter at this stage.
Yeah, well, it's coming down the road. Billy, stay with me because I want to go to Alan. Alan, are you there? I want to apologise for you getting cut off last night.
No,
Sorry about that.
It's okay. It's okay, Gary. My opinion is, if voting was in any way real and could cause change, they'd outlaw it. The whole concept of voting is that we have an elected dictatorship, and that's all it is, Gary, an elected dictatorship, where they overrule us for 5 years and then give us a semblance of choice at the end of it.
So you think you're going to vote, Alan, aren't you?
Well, I never. Do you know I haven't voted in years?
Have you not?
Gary, I just don't have any interest in voting. I know it's a bad thing because there's people out there dying to vote, but I don't want to have any part in electing someone who's going to be in government or in opposition for 5 years and make a fortune out of it as well. I'd rather not subscribe to that kind of nonsense. I'd rather step back and let the chips fall without my consent.
So none of them, Alan, none of them speak to you. You're not. None of them would actually get you to get up off your backside and go out and vote. None of them would.
There's one local politician around in my area in Newbridge, and I like him. He's very good, and he's done a lot of things for me. And if I was to get out my arse and vote, I'd vote give him me number one.
Well, there you are. I'm sure he'd appreciate it if he's done things for you.
I would. I just haven't registered in years. I was looking after my wife for 10 years, so I hadn't got a chance to do anything practical like that. But I think voting is actually the last of a dying breed for the working class man. It doesn't suffice for anyone. A lot of the people who are out protesting will not go out and vote. That's the gas thing. They're all out protesting about injustice, and yet they won't put their vote down either. So you can't expect change unless you...
Question there for Alan. Alan, do you complain about the government?
No, I don't.
You don't? Okay, that's fair enough. If you don't vote, you shouldn't complain. That's fine. That's all I really want to ask.
There's a famous line by a great comedian who died years ago, George Carlin, and he said because he doesn't vote, he has a right to complain because he didn't sanction it. I don't sanction.
If you don't vote, you're not involved in the process. What do you expect to happen? If you're not exercising your right to vote, like if you're not going out, why'd you get to complain about it? You're not given a preference, whether they be in opposition or in government.
Yeah, because I know that what you're saying there is true, but you see, I don't complain about governments, or I just take on the chin. I take on the chin and take...
It would be a different story if you were coming on complaining about the government after not voting. I
don't go protesting, and I don't demand that.
I think Billy, Alan, hold on a second. I think Billy, what Alan is saying, that he just has no interest because he thinks it's going to be the same thing all the time.
I appreciate that, Gary, but I also appreciate the fact that he's honest. He's saying he's not being honest. Complain about it either way. Like that's
I know what you mean, Billy. Is that people who complain about the government but don't vote, they don't really have a right to complain because they didn't partake.
You didn't partake. You don't have a right to complain about the way things are going if you're not going to get involved.
I hear you. You two stay with me because I want to get Rob in on this because Rob, you've got You've got an idea that we heard about last night as well. You think we need Elon Musk and JD Vance to intervene?
Yeah, and I think there's plenty of people here now at the moment. Hi, Gary, how are you?
Good.
There's looking at X, and there's plenty of people there trying to raise and all this with the likes of Elon Musk and JD Vance, and they're all talking about the incoming hate speech laws that are about to be foisted upon us.
And what do you like the cut of JD Vance's jib? Do you like
Yeah,
him
I
as a
think he's
politician?
great. Yeah, I think he's good. Yeah, he's straight to the point, and he's the man that's going to take over there. By the way, if it's not him, it'll be the other fellow, Elon Musk.
Well, the way US politics goes is the vice president, if it's been a good two-term, which Trump is different than a usual two-term, but usually like George W. Bush ran after Ronald Reagan and the Republicans had the White House for 12 years. It is very possible that JD Vance will run when Trump has finished this term.
Yeah, very, very possible, yeah. I can see it.
And do you think
get that policies implemented? Why not?
Do you think we need that sort of approach in Ireland?
Mm-hmm. We do. The way things are gone here, it's just ridiculous. We got a cabal of people here now, Gary. Like, what's in that rogue government? Because that's to me that they're a rogue group of people, and
so he wants the richest
they're
man
foisting
in the world to have a say in Irish politics.
Huh?
Hold on, Billy. Rob, hold on a second. Billy, what did you say there?
You want the richest man in the world to have a say in Irish politics. That's what you want. You want Elon Musk to have a say.
Mm-hmm.
You trust
a businessman.
Elon Musk. No, just not a businessman. The richest man in the world. You want an oligarchy is what you want.
Well, I'd rather have him than what's there now.
You want wealth to control. Like Elon. In fairness, Elon Musk could probably buy the country lock, stock, and barrel tomorrow. So send him a tweet and ask him. But that's what you want. The richest man in the world to have a say over your country. A man that has no citizenship here. Would you like any other immigrant to come in and have a say in your country?
No, Musk will do.
Just Musk. Just the richest one. Okay. One other question for you. Can you give me three things that you like about JD Vance?
Yeah, he's a very good speaker.
Okay, one.
He takes no bullshit from these woke journalists.
On policy, what's JD Vance done politically that you think would make him a good leader in Ireland? You said he speaks well. I give you that. He writes well. Hillbilly Elegy was a massive bestseller book. But give me one thing politically that JD Vance has achieved in his career that you think would be good to be replicated here.
Well, whatever he's done in his local state.
You don't know. You're talking shit. You don't know.
Hold on, Billy. In Rob's defence, I think what he's saying is, and a lot of people vote like that. They vote on personality, and there's nothing wrong with that.
They vote on personality, but isn't that why half the problems that we have? Where parish pump politics win every time. Where it's the local guy that wins. It's not the national issues that are voted on. It's the local issues. And as many politicians will tell you, all politics is local. And all voters are concerned with local issues. But we have bigger issues. We have national issues. And we need to vote on those national issues, things that are going to affect the country as a whole.
Well, Billy, say, Billy, there was an Irish Elon Musk. Would you have a problem with that? Because I know you were saying Elon Musk isn't from Ireland.
There is Irish Elon Musk.
Okay.
There's the likes of what's his name, Ryanair, Michael.
There you go, Michael O'Leary. So Michael O'Leary comes in and says, "I'm going to stand and I'm going to become a TD."
I'll tell you what. If Michael O'Leary went into Dunleary or Rathdown or wherever he's living and put his name on the ballot and stood for election and got elected by the people in that constituency, I'd have zero issue with that. Zero issue. If Elon Musk went as an American citizen and stood for election and was democratically elected, I'd have zero issue with that. I have zero issue with JD Vance being elected. I just don't think JD Vance should have any say in Irish politics. But Elon Musk is going to be appointed. He is going to be unaccountable to the people. He cannot be elected or re-elected or recalled. He is going to be there appointed to do a job that's kind of makey-uppy. It sounds great. but it's kind of makey-uppy. So, no, I don't think Elon Musk should have any part to play in American politics.
Yeah, but hang on. He's putting...
Go ahead there, Rob.
He's there for business. He's a businessman. As well as an inventor and all kinds of stuff.
So what?
What we have here, right? What we have here are
if he wants to be a politician,
people who haven't worked in jobs. That's the way we have it here. People that never held down jobs.
People who now, there are, in fairness, you're not wrong, there are some politicians who went straight into the Dáil. There's no denying that. The Taoiseach is one of those. Paul Murphy never had a real job.
Yeah.
I'm not disagreeing with you on that.
No understanding.
Yeah, but neither does Elon Musk. Elon Musk's dad was a millionaire, multi-millionaire. He had a charmed existence. His dad owned an emerald mine in South Africa.
What would you prefer, Billy? Billy, what would you prefer in charge of the country? Someone who has left school and went straight into politics, or someone who left school, built a business and then went into politics? Who do you think would be a better representation of the people?
Gary, we're not talking about Elon Musk going into politics.
I'm not talking about Elon Musk either. No, I'm not talking about him. I'm asking you a separate question.
I'd much rather someone with life experience go into politics because they've lived a little. They understand things. Simon Harris, was came straight out of college, dropped out of college, didn't finish, and went straight in as the parliamentary secretary for, what was the woman's name? Fine Gael, Minister for Justice.
I know who's talking. Frances Fitzgerald.
No, she was Frances Fitzgerald. Thank you.
It's T-boy for Frances Fitzgerald or something like that.
Yeah, it was Frances Fitzgerald, and then he ran and he was duly elected. Now, look, he made his decisions. He didn't have life experience. He was probably promoted into a cabinet position far too early, but it happens. Like, I don't necessarily agree with him. I don't agree with him on a lot of things.
Billy,
I won't vote for him.
But then, Billy, you had Michael Martin.
Micheál Martin? Yeah. Micheál Martin was a qualified secondary school teacher in Cork.
Teacher, yeah. Again, not business.
Yeah.
Not in business.
Yeah, but here's the thing. A lot of businessmen don't want to go into politics.
Yeah.
Because they want to make
money.
He's
a teacher, right? He was a teacher. Hang on a sec, Billy. He's a teacher. A job you can't be sacked in, right? No matter how bad you are.
Oh, I agree with you. That should be there should be ways to get rid of teachers and civil servants who are underperforming in their jobs. There's no doubt about that.
Mm-hmm.
But what as I said to you, businessmen and people who run companies and make money don't really usually want to go into politics because they're too busy making money.
Well, they make less money. They make less money if they went into politics. You hear that all the time. Yeah. They say, "Listen, I'm doing all right out here. I don't want to take a pay cut."
I mean, yeah, but
if you're at the top of your business, if you're a banker or a trader or something like that, and you're making hundreds of thousands or maybe $1 million a year, why are you going to take a massive pay cut to be a TD?
Yeah, why would you want that?
Say again?
But you see, look at Musk though. He's not doing it just for that. He's doing it to save America.
Musk isn't going to get paid. Musk, I'll tell you what, Elon Musk made a $100 million investment in Donald Trump, and Elon Musk's net worth has gone up $26 billion on Donald Trump's election because stock in Tesla has risen.
I saw a tweet last week about that, and it said Elon Musk bought Twitter for $44 billion, and all he got was 3 houses of government. It's not a bad purchase in the end of it. But I want to get back. I want to get back to what we were talking about: promises, pledges, and proposals. We're going to hear about them over the next 2 to 3 weeks, and we have to listen to them, and we have to really make our choices based on what the politicians are saying. It can't all be amounting to a hill of beans. There has to be some truth in it, Billy. What do you think of that?
But Gary, take Fine Gael's proposal to reduce the VAT rate to 11% for hotels and other businesses.
Hospitality, yeah.
Under EU law, we can have 2 VAT rates. Our current 2 VAT rates are 23% and 9%. They cannot introduce an 11%. If they introduce an 11%, everything in hospitality that is at 9% now will go up to 11%. And all the other stuff that's at 23% will go down to 11%. It's a balancing act, is what they're doing here.
And do you think they've handled it well? Because restaurateurs would totally disagree that the government have done a decent job on that.
Well, Niall will often have Paul Trevaux on. Obviously, the restaurant sector is in crisis. They can't get people in. I agree with minimum wage. I agree with holiday pay for people. I agree with sick pay for people. However, for restaurants, the government is not covering them, and it's making it cost prohibitive to run a restaurant.
It's definitely challenging circumstances around inflation and everything. And, the general feeling is that around the world post-COVID, most of the governments that were in around the 2019-2020 to now kind of timeline, it's variously different in various different countries, they've all sort of been kicked out. So do you think that's a worry for Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil at the moment?
I don't think it is, Gary.
No.
Why would they be worried?
Because of inflation. That's what I think it is from looking at the numbers.
Look, let's call a spade. Unpopular opinion. From 2011 to 2024, outside of the COVID years, the country has made a mint through corporation tax. Unemployment is at 3 to 4%. For all intents and purposes, it's not looking bad economically speaking. Inflation has hit people hard. Prices have definitely increased. The Green Party coming into power and putting on higher carbon taxes has increased the price of fuel, which in turn has increased the prices that people pay for goods and services that they receive, because everything has to get to a shop. Restaurants with the return of the VAT rate to 23% has had to up their prices, and then the other things that I mentioned in terms of minimum wage and holiday and sick pay for people who work for them mean that their bottom line has decreased massively, and people are expected to pay more for the same stuff that they were paying less for in the last couple of years.
And do you think people feel it though? I mean, the same thing happened in America. Biden's economy was flying. I mean, it was doing great. All the numbers are fantastic if you look at them on a piece of paper. But if you go down to the supermarket, you're paying $12, $13 for a dozen eggs.
Well, I'm not sure if you're paying that much for a dozen eggs.
It's around that.
I haven't been to America for a couple of years, so I don't know. I did hear a figure of $2 for an apple the other day, so I've heard that. I don't know about the dozen eggs.
And it's not an iPhone, I'll tell you that for nothing.
Fair enough. To be honest with you, food in America, for the most part, isn't that nice. But inflation is hitting people hard. There's no doubt about it.
And there you go. We're going to have to leave it there, guys. I really appreciate Alan, Billy, and Rob coming in on this. I enjoyed that chat, and we'll leave it with the magic word inflation. And I'm sure we're going to talk about this again.
Now, real people, real opinions. Nighttime Talk.
Ireland's classic hits radio.